Driving, 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 music's blaring in my ears. Engines roaring, 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 the horizon's drawing near. Pedal to the floor, no more feet in the door. Gonna drive right out of this bitter night. I'm a constant seeker in Converse sneakers.
Welcome to Nonprofit Insider. My name is David Unger, and I'm pleased to be hosting a show with executive directors and key people of local nonprofits. I personally have worked in the nonprofit world for over 30 years. In those years, I've realized that the majority of the community does not know about the organizations that provide critical services and benefits to our community, and that we sometimes take for granted. Nonprofit Insiders, a chance to hear about the organizations that touch so many in our community. The opinions expressed on Nonprofit Insider are not necessarily those of WMPG, its staff and underwriters, or of USM. As you probably, first of all, it's good to be back. I took a couple weeks off, and Deb and crew really helped keep the radio show going, and I know it was tough, but I understand we had some great music in here in the meantime, so I'm glad to be back. We had a tremendous response over the last couple months when we had two nonprofit consultants with us, where we asked the consultant, and we're pleased to have Bill Bayreuther back again today and Ronnie Weston back today. Welcome.
Thank you. It's great to be back.
Thanks, David. It sure is.
Well, you're going after my job, aren't you, here with that great weather forecast here?
Well, if I could do it long distance and get fed all the information, sure.
Oh, okay. Well, we'll work on that. Bill is principal of William A. Bayreuther Grant Writing, an independent consulting practice that assists clients with operating, project, capacity building, and capital fundraising strategy. Bill is a frequent skill builder training for the Maine Association of Nonprofits. Ronnie Weston founded the Bull Moose Group, a collaborative group of independent consultants to counsel nonprofits in fulfilling their missions and realizing their visions. Specializing in grassroots fundraising and board recruitment and development, Ronnie places special emphasis on the role of the nonprofit in enriching the community. It's not often that we get so many great minds in one room together, so if you have any questions for either of them or myself, please call in at 780-4909, and our phones are being monitored very carefully by Deb at this point. And Deb, you are monitoring the phones, right? Okay, Deb, you are monitoring the phones, right? Yes, she is. Okay, so please call in. One of the feedback that we got from the last two shows was that people wanted to hear more about our perception of what the case for support means. How is it? What is it? Is it storytelling? Is it factual? What are your thoughts on that?
Well, that's a pretty general question to start with, David. But
I thought then we'd drill it down. How's that?
Gotcha. Well, let me take a stab at our introduction. In the nonprofit world, when somebody makes a donation, they're buying something. And the question is, we need to help our clients, help them understand and articulate what they're selling. And the best way, in my mind, to sell something is to tell a story. It may manifest itself in a case statement, which is often used for capital campaigns. It may manifest itself in board members being able to articulate how their mission plays out in the community. It may come out in the newsletter of the nonprofit. So if it's okay with the two of you, I'd like us to focus on how do we tell the story? How do we help board members tell the story, which may take one of its forms in the case statement?
Should we have a vote?
I'm pretty sure it's unanimous. We're there.
Okay. Go for it.
So you want me to start there?
Sure.
Okay. Well, one of the exercises that I help clients do is to tell their story. And the first thing, again, if somebody's buying something, we need to know what we're selling. So in other words, what do we do well in the case of a nonprofit?
Can I just interrupt?
Sure.
Because one of the things that I run into, and I don't know about you, Bill, is when you say that the donor is buying something, it's not a widget.
No, it's not.
Okay, so we're asking them to buy something like a vision.
They're buying a vision. They're buying an outcome, right?
Right.
What else, Bill, would they be buying?
Well, they're providing the funding, they're investing in the nonprofit to accomplish the vision.
But it's
That's
nothing
exactly
that they
what
could
they're
take
doing.
home and put into their box or.
It's largely conceptual. They're buying human services. They're helping to buy land or to protect land through a conservation easement.
They may be buying a solution
Right.
to a problem,
Yep.
right? But we have to demonstrate to them what that looks like. And that story can be in words, oftentimes is in the case statement. That story can be a picture, which they say, of course, is 1,000 words. That story can be a video, and it can take many formats, but we've got to help the donor understand what they're buying.
So, how do we begin doing that? I mean, it's really complicated because if you think about a nonprofit, you have the mission statement, and a lot of times that goes into technical jargon, and I use the terminology mission flow because a lot of times when I ask, "What's your vision?" they just give me back their mission.
So for me, everything begins with mission statement, right? And I attended, this is so on point, I attended a board orientation as a board member the other day, and I like to sit on both sides of the table. And the CEO was doing a full board orientation, and he, of course, appropriately started with mission. And what did he do? He read the mission statement and then went on to vision and whatever else. And I left feeling very empty and had a conversation with him afterwards, and I said, what could you have done differently? You have so much passion. You have the vision. You started this thing, yet all you did was read the words. Tell me the stories that go along with that mission statement.
So, do you find it's important to put it in, for lack of better terms, common language?
I think that a good mission statement isn't really flowery. It's not terribly technical. It's in plain words that the average person is comfortable with and that really tell what's involved. I think that mission statements should be clear, not too darn long, in just plain language that really encapsulates or incorporates the breadth of what the organization is doing.
Should an organization have a different case for support or different story for each campaign, or should they be kind of universal?
Well, they're going to have what's called an internal case for support. Why should somebody give money to our organization? Again, what are we selling? What do we do that's unique? What do we do that's well? I call them points of pride. One of the other things is I counsel my board members to start every board meeting with the point of pride. That brings the mission statement home. That brings the purpose of what they're doing on a daily basis home. So what do we do well? What makes us unique? And then who are we trying to reach? That's kind of your internal case for support. That can look like a piece of paper, but in the end, it's going to be the story that brings all of those points home. Who are the people served? How are they better after the money has come in the door?
So, the organization goes through this exercise and creates a case for support or story. And you mentioned something earlier, and Bill, how do you get folks involved in using this on a regular basis? I mean, that's been one of the big things that I've seen. They create this case for support, and then they send out a newsletter and it has absolutely nothing to do with the case for support.
I'd like to think of the mission statement as sort of the touchstone that you use. You keep coming back to it in dealing with the public and in dealing with your constituency. I think that you need to remember what you're about and to constantly let folks know about it. The newsletters need to not only have it in the masthead or at the bottom of page 2 or wherever, but illustrate how you're achieving it. And I think that being able to get the story out to illustrate how you're fulfilling your mission can be done in a bunch of different ways. And I believe Ronnie probably works with boards on this a lot more than I do. but it's really important to have board members recognize why they're involved with an organization. And I've done exercises in the past when I've been working with clients for whom I was doing more than pure grant writing. I've asked them, why are you involved with the organization? What brought you in the beginning? And then kind of gone around the room and listened to that, and then said, you know what? You folks may not be intimately involved in the day-to-day fundraising of the organization, but you have a great opportunity to help the organization by saying what you just told us in this room to the public, either one-on-one to a potential donor or in a much more public venue.
It's so exactly on point. It's kind of what we talked about the last time we were all together, that everybody can be a fundraiser, and that is a fundraiser by just saying how you're involved. So how does it play out? The first is people learn to say how they're involved. How did they become attracted to the organization? Then they can describe the impact. And then as another way to fundraise is to thank people for their donations. And when you thank them, it's not just the words thank you, but thank you and here's how your money was spent. And to be able to tell that story is impactful.
Right. Okay, we're going to follow up, but we're at our point of our trivia question and then the midpoint identifier. This is a very interesting trivia question, and I found it online, so it must be true. It turns out that there's a holiday every day in May. What holiday are we celebrating or honoring today? All right, this is Nonprofit Insider, and I'm David Unger, and we're on WMPG 90.9 and 104.1 FM Community Radio of Southern Maine and Eastern New Hampshire. Today we have part 3 of Ask the Consultants with Ronnie Weston and Bill Bayreuther. So the trivia question again, it turns out that there's a holiday every day in May. Put your iPhones away. What holiday are we celebrating or honoring today?
Every time you ask these questions, I say, I don't have a clue. I don't have a clue.
I've got the same clue
Okay.
that Ronnie has.
According to coffeeclutchgals.hubpages.com, today,
I missed it this morning.
I know, today is Buy a Musical Instrument Day or No Dirty Dishes Day. So you could pick one. Now, next Friday, though, is a very, very important holiday that everybody should be celebrating. It's the End of Middle Ages Day. So please don't forget to get your loved one a greeting card to celebrate End of Middle Ages Day. I did find this online. It must be true. All right, so let's get back to the lot of useless information here on Nonprofit Insider. All agree?
Perhaps not all of it in the teaser.
Right. All right, so let's get back to the important issues, the case for support and storytelling. What would you, let me jump back a little bit. You had mentioned in grants and, we're talking about the boards, but when you write grants, how important is telling the story? How important is the case for support?
It's very important, and there certainly are different ways to do it. I'll lead into this with a quick story that I think illustrates the value of the personal connection and the personal importance of working with a given nonprofit that we were just speaking about. I was recently went out of state with the CEO of one of my nonprofit clients to meet a large representative of a large charitable foundation to see to whom the client had submitted a letter of interest, and we were trying to get this particular foundation to accept a full proposal, to invite one. The CEO sat down, we introduced ourselves, and started to get into things. And I asked him to tell the foundation representative his personal story, how he got involved in the nonprofit for which he was now the CEO. And he, in a very short period of time, told a really personal, almost make me cry kind of story about how he had come in and had helped provide services to a young man who was being served by the very institution he now was CEO of as a volunteer. And he talked about how he learned of the impact that he was having on this young fellow, and it wasn't immediately apparent, and it only came to him after a couple of years, and it just really brought home for me, and fortunately for us to the foundation representative, just how important these services were and how it made someone who was working as a volunteer for the organization at the time feel the value that they saw.
Right.
And so many times the executive director or the development director can do that, but we need every board member to be able to articulate that. And when they're encouraged to do that through these exercises, they're empowered to say, oh, I get it. If I'm at a cocktail party, I can have a conversation with somebody. I'm not selling them on, take out your wallet, give me money. I'm just sharing why this is important to me, and that's infectious.
So that even goes into the model of relationship-based fundraising, where you're building the relationships, not necessarily asking people for something all the time.
We have very few people who are really going to make the ask. So the most important thing that our board members can do is build those relationships, open up those doors, tell the stories. The ask will come naturally after that, and the money will come.
Should time be put aside at each board meeting for this type of training or this type of orientation?
I like to do a special training at a board meeting. Generally, the beginning of each year, maybe there's a new set of board members coming on. And then the follow-up is a point of pride conversation at the beginning of each board meeting, or a story by a client served, if it's that kind of organization, so that it brings the story back and it brings it to the forefront of the meeting, which prevents a lot of times conflicts that may be arising over petty stuff between board members. If you always bring it back to the mission and what it is that you're doing, that's going to happen a whole lot less.
Any thoughts on that?
I think that makes great sense. I think focusing on the good that an organization is doing and an aha moment, as many people call it, or a point of pride, as Ronnie puts it, makes a lot of sense. And having something very positive early in a meeting, I think, can go a long way. And I bet that board members often look forward to it.
They love it. They love it. And if they didn't do it before, they will universally say, I can't believe we didn't do this.
Right. One of the things that I find very interesting in today's technology is that the number of nonprofits who don't take advantage of it to continue with telling the story. I mean, even in the thank you notes, you have such capability right now of personalizing the thank you letters, even though you're doing them en masse, of really telling them the story and continually telling them the story versus just thank you for your gift, blah, 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 blah. How do we get nonprofits to really begin doing this stuff? I mean, it's at their fingertips. Most of them have the tools to do it already.
Show them that it works. Help them, the first couple of times that they do it, to really inject a heavy stewardship component or a cultivation component before someone is given into a relationship, and show them that it's okay to be an individual and to be a real person and to deal with a potential donor, whether they're an individual or an institutional donor, as a real person. Let them use their voice and show them, not show them, but let them see what the reaction is.
I totally agree. And I think the other thing to note is that this is a trend, or this is the mood of the fundraising world right now. The Association of Fundraising Professionals National Conference brought in Seth Godin, who is a
Right.
brilliant marketer, right? But not just recently started concentrating on nonprofits, and to have him speak about the power of stories, I think is going to filter down to a lot of organizations.
Do you think that nonprofits spend enough time on their marketing plans per se? I mean, not marketing the agency. There's big smiles in this room.
I think that the easy and quick answer is no, they don't. But I think the reality is some do it really well, some okay, and a bunch not. But you mentioned the newsletter before, and it's kind of a pet peeve of mine. Think about how many newsletters you've seen, and you see pictures of a recent fundraiser, their big gala, and you see people dancing and table pictures and the people who were there, and then all of a sudden you start thinking, well, if I was there, how come I'm not in a picture? Is any of that relevant to a donor? No. What's relevant is pictures of the kids that money from that gala went to serve, or the animals if it's an animal welfare league. So you need to start looking at what your marketing materials are and what do you want to convey and who's buying from that.
But let me play devil's advocate.
Okay.
Here's a first.
You know me too well. Isn't there something to be said by making it a social scene per se, that this person was there, and isn't that part of bringing new donors in?
Maybe in the society pages of the local newspaper
Okay.
or the local magazine. I think for an organization's newsletter, I don't think that's doing anybody a service.
So there's a time and a place for those type of pictures somewhere.
Yes.
Okay. So, and again, one of the problems that I've always seen is linking, and we talked a little bit about this earlier, about linking the vision statement to the case for support or the story. That it's, sometimes I see that there's a gap between what the organization's vision statement is and how they translate that into the case for support. Any thoughts about how a group can make sure that this is tied in together?
Vision statements, and I definitely want to hear Bill's response to this. Vision statements are tough because vision statements are so big.
They're easier
oftentimes.
than philosophical statements.
Yes, but they're so big, and this is straight from what Seth Godin said. Sometimes we can't solve the problem. That's the vision statement, right? And it's okay to not solve the problem. Your vision may be phenomenal, but
Right.
you may never get there. But it's okay to ask the donor to partner with you on that road. And we're going to hit obstacles, but we're going to tackle them together. I don't know if that answers your question directly, but I think it's okay to take baby steps towards that vision, and the case for support is that baby step.
That works for me. I think Ronnie captured that well. A vision statement, as I see it, often is something that is very ambitious. And you make progress toward that by fulfilling what you have in your mission statement through a project or a series of programs that you'd be talking about within a case statement or whatever other sort of appeal or materials you're using.
So if you had to ask a question to a CEO or an executive director or president of a board, what would be the most common question you would ask them about what are you doing? Why are you doing this? What is showing up that's frustrating you as a consultant that organizations are doing?
I like to ask nonprofits, what do you do the best? And really focus on that. I did that as an executive director, and I do it as a consultant now. What is it that really, what do you do the best? Maybe you should be focusing on that.
Yep, I agree with that. That's the second question in the exercise I do with the boards, and it's what do we have that no one else has? It's okay to think geographically. Maybe you're the only arts therapy organization in the state of Maine, as an example. There are lots of other examples. So I would focus on that. That would be my question. What do you do that other people don't do, other organizations don't do, and how well do you do that?
That's great. So I think that's a great place to jump off at this point, because that's the key. What separates you from everybody else, and what do you do best? We're hearing harp music. I don't know if the air is hearing it or not.
I thought that was just in my head. Oh, jeez.
Well, thank you again, Ronnie and Bill, for being on the show. Hopefully we'll have you back in a couple months, and we'll go to our Facebook page, Nonprofit Insider, if you want to post any questions for them, and I'll make sure they get them, or we'll pick up a theme for our next radio show. Next week, we have Nate Nickerson. Nate is the Executive Director of Knobit Sante Cap Haitian Health Partnership. So we're excited to bring Nate in. The music appears courtesy of Mike Hubbard. You can find Mike's music on www.michaelhubbardmusic.com. Check out Mike's website to see where he's playing this weekend. Thanks to Deb Danger, MPI's executive engineer. You can catch Deb on Morning Street Fridays at 6:30. If you know of a nonprofit that should be on the show, please go to our Facebook page at Nonprofit Insider and let me know. Past shows are archived at www.tcmgr.com, Nonprofit Insider tab. Until next week.
And please stay tuned for Zvuky Grusi, music of Mother Russia and neighboring countries, up at 1:30 with our friend Artur. Thanks, David. Good to have you back.
Thanks.